Hello, I'm Devoney Looser, and welcome to Nonfiction Proposal Writing. I'm looking forward to sharing with you some tips and tricks and some basics, and I hope some insights about this process. Especially if you're new to it, there'll be a lot for you here, but even if you are fairly experienced in this, I hope you'll come away with a few new ideas. So here's my opening pitch. I think it's important to come up with nonfiction proposals that pop. Obviously, we all know this. In this session, we're going to talk about how you might take a true story that you're close to or that you care about deeply, and it can be your own or someone else's, and shape it into a proposal for a book that leaves readers wanting more. So I'm going to tell you about how to take your fact-filled projects, turn them into fascinating stories, and how to catch the eye of agents and all of the parts that a proposal entails. So let's talk about the basics first. Fiction generally sells as a finished manuscript, a finished work, but nonfiction generally sells on the basis of a proposal. Now, it is true that memoir sometimes falls in an in-between space, so it's possible that you're dealing with an organization that is going to want to treat your memoir like fiction. But nonfiction of other kinds, and often memoir, requires a proposal and sells on the basis of a proposal. So your agent, if you have one, may help you with your proposal. A start of a proposal may help you capture an agent or catch an agent. So these are important even as you are at the beginning stages of a project. And your editor, if you want one, if you are looking for one after your agent or wherever you head next with this project, will want to help you shape and reshape the project. That's why the proposal is important. So they're going to want to help you revise, reorder, recast, change its length. These are the kinds of things that editors will be able to do with you on the basis of an accepted and contracted proposal. So even if your book is finished, quote unquote, if you're hoping to sell the book in a conventional way, then you'll want to have a proposal for it first. Now, proposals can range in a lot of lengths, but 25 to 75 pages is probably a good range to think about as you're writing this. Again, it depends on the genre, depends on the kind of book that you're publishing, how long that document might be expected to be. If you're self-publishing, you may not need or want a proposal, but it can't hurt to begin with one. So what's your story? If it is more than a collection of facts told in order, you're going to be in a better position. If it's more than an overview of details, you're going to be in a better position. It must be both of those. It needs to be more than the sum of its parts. That is, it needs to be a story that moves, transforms, or makes meaning. If you have all of these things, you have facts, but the story that you put together is more than facts. You have details, but the story that you put together is more than an overview. If you have something that has a reason for being that's moving, transformative, or meaning making, you're in a better position. Then you're on the right track. So what you need to do in the proposal is to communicate why this true story needs to be told. It's never been told before isn't enough. So many stories haven't been told before. It happened or it happened to me, also not enough. You need to push beyond those two. You need to make a compelling case for why we need this particular story right now. So what concerns, you might ask yourself, does your nonfiction book work out that matter to a particular audience of people, a particular group of people now? What themes does it cover, whether it's about the past or the present? What themes does it cover that might make the book the right one for this moment? What burning questions does it address? So I'd like you to think about the proposal as a kind of extended advertising copy for your book. That is, you are working to sell this project as interesting, meaningful, important, and of value to a particular set of readers. So if you want to figure out why the story you've chosen, you also need to make it clear why it's your true story, why you're the one that should be telling this story in book form. What is your authority? What's your expertise? What's your close tie to the story? Can it be summed up in a thrilling sentence? Even better. If someone else could tell or has told this story, then you need to explain why you're going to do a better version of it. What convincing evidence do you have for the claim that you're going to do a better version of it? So, in the best case scenario, you'd be the only one who could tell the story in this way, in a particular way, and you could answer the rest of that sentence with a persuasive, compelling evidence. So if the story is your story, fully or in part, then you need to also think about how it will resonate with others, whether or not they've had the same experience you've had. How will it help or change them? These are the kinds of things you want to be able to communicate in the proposal as well. So the proposal is not only about why this book, it's about why you as the writer of this book. So to get a good start in this, you need to step back to get the view from 30,000 feet. That is, you're probably very caught up in the details of your story. But to step back and take a wide angle view to get a really good vision of it, you should try a couple of exercises. And here are a couple I like. One is, if you had only one sentence to describe a book, how would you do it? So indirectly, you're making an argument for your story's importance. That's your pitch. And here's a way to see how ready you are, or to help yourself become more ready for making that argument for a pitch. How would you feel in this sentence? The story is about blank, and it's told in order to blank, which matters because blank. If you can tell that to somebody and they say, I want to know more about that, or tell it to 10 people and they say, I want to know more about that, you know you're on the right track. This is, again, a way to try to refine what's important about your book and how to create your proposal. How about trying to do it in one paragraph? And now how about trying to do that in one page? These are the higher level details that should structure and organize your proposal. They're the ones that should be communicated and expanded on, and what I said, what I call yummy prose. That is prose that's a snack that makes you want the full meal. Proposal writing is difficult. I think some people think, well, the writing of the book is the hard part. Proposal writing can be just as hard, and that's good. It's because you have to really refine, organize, and come to the point about what you want to say in this book-length project. It might take a long time to perfect a winning proposal. It might take as long as it takes to actually write the book, and that's okay. It's not uncommon for a proposal to be something that's worked on for a year or even years. Proposals are like a roadmap. You need to let the reader know the steps of the journey that you'll be going on together in the book before you even start the car. That's where the proposal comes in. You might not even know exactly how you're going to get there yet. That is, if you're writing the proposal before you've written the book, you're still probably figuring out the roadmap. But far more important is making readers want to get in the car with you for this particular journey, when they might choose to take countless other trips instead. And sorry for the extended car metaphors there. I think maybe I'm longing for a road trip these days. But I think you get the picture. This is about trying to guess where the book is going to go, trying to allow people to see the parts of the steps, the parts of the journey, and to have them want to come along with you. So your agent or your editor may be your first reader of this proposal, but they're reading it to see if your work will attract, will sell to lots of readers. And they're looking to be convinced that you can do what you say you'll do and the way that you say it. But also they want to be persuaded that the book will be bought and read. So how do you leave them wanting more? I would say you want to emphasize the narrative part of narrative nonfiction. Give your overview, describe the book itself as with a recognizable arc or pattern. And you might think about it a beginning, a middle, and an end, an exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, just like you would in a novel. It's possible that your story can be told in those ways too. Or if it doesn't lend itself to that kind of storytelling, you could organize it as a collection of interesting characters or themes, people or things that you're following through this true story. But they should be connected parts with some evident link that makes readers want to jump from one chapter to the next. So even books of nonfiction argument or collections of essays include stories, themes, and connections. You want to find ways to make the story stand in for larger things. Of course, also, you want to use evidence that passes muster. This is nonfiction after all. If your evidence doesn't pass muster, then it may not be the right genre for your book. You may need to present the book as a hybrid genre. And you know, the example I always think of here is Moby Dick, the novel with all of its whaling chapters, which you know, may not be entirely accurate as history, but it reads like a mix of fiction and nonfiction. And there are certainly plenty of people who are writing books that are hybrid in this way. But the nonfiction parts of your evidence need to be, you know, tight, need to be airtight, and need to be sound. So what are the parts of the proposal? Let's look at those next. Just like a resume or a vita, a curriculum vitae has expected parts, so too does a proposal. But these parts aren't necessarily fixed, or they aren't necessarily presented in a lockstep order. There are conventions, and you can break them if you need to, but you should know what they are. The greater point here is to persuade, sell, and hook with these parts in an order that's logical. There should be a table of contents at the beginning of the proposal to guide the reader and to make skipping around possible and providing a sense of scope. A proposal usually begins with an overview, which is its narrative, it's its story, its overarching story, as well as a compressed version or summary. There'll be some telling, of course, the summarizing, but you should aim to tell by showing whenever it's possible. You should have things that stand in for larger things, stories that compel as part of your summary. So the overview, the first section, I like to call this the hook 'em or lose 'em section. You definitely need to say why this book and what the book is about, but this is your chance to hook them. The next section is the author background, where you give information about why you for this book. You might talk about your process. It might talk about how you decided to write this book, how you came to be the right person to write this book, what your process through it has been, what you are likely to bring to the table that will be interesting to the person who picks up the book. So about the author, who you are in relation to this book, again, process, but expertise, experiences, and advantages. Marketing and publicity. This section goes into how you will attract readers and who specifically are your likely readers. You don't want to say everyone. That's not a good answer. You want to have a sense of who your readers are likely to be, their ages, their interests, the ways, the experiences that might bring them to these books, the category, the genre on the back of the book that's likely to be most close to its content. And finally, what's your author platform? That is, what are the things you already have in place that will help bring readers to you? Another section you're going to want to include is your competing titles. These are which other books are like yours. We'll come back to that in a minute. And then the meat of the proposal after those other parts are the chapter descriptions, where you go through and describe each part of your story, each chapter, each part of your nonfiction book. Then you'll have a sample chapter, and that should be an example of your powers as a writer, and it should be compelling, obviously. This should be the part that somebody doesn't want to put down. Your proposal also might have an appendix or an appendices that help provide factual information that you wouldn't want to have to go into great detail about, but you want there. Might be a chronology, might be, if it's a literary biography, as I write, it might be a list of works by the individual you're covering. These kinds of things could go in appendix as well. So the sample chapter, it could be, but it doesn't have to be your first chapter. I think you should try to choose the chapter from among the descriptions that you provide on those chapter descriptions, and they should line up, obviously, right? If you want to include a chapter that you've said you're going to include, that pops off the page. So the sample page, like the overview, should be in your style, your voice, the one that readers trust, the one that they'll be interested in, and the one they'll want to follow through the work as a whole. So this is not an I'm going to do section, but a here is me doing it section. It's not a fake it till you make it situation either. This is not a try to come up with a chapter that is inauthentic in any way, or that's punching the clock. This has got to be it. This has got to be what you're really capable of doing and what the book will be. It's a make it till you are no longer faking it situation. This may be how to think about it. So your chapter, your sample chapter has to stand in for what the book as a whole can do. So that section where we talked about finding comparative titles, finding your comps. There are no comparative titles is the wrong answer. Just like everyone will read this book is the wrong answer, there are no comparative titles is the wrong answer. No one wants to buy a book that they can't sell. And comparative titles is a way of showing that your book has a place, has an audience, and can sell. That said, the opposite side of that, if your book is no different from dozens of others like it, then that's no good either. You want to try to find something that's, in the middle of those two, right? Try to describe positively how your book is different or better from the ones that it is in conversation with. So by this, I mean, not all those other books that came before stink. I would recommend not going that route, especially because you don't know who's reading it and what their involvement was with those other books. But also, it's just not a way to be very collegial or professional. You want to talk about what you do that builds on what came before, what you do that goes in a new direction from what came before. Those are more positive ways of stating the differences of what you're doing. Another way that is often used for comparatives is that this book uses the style of X author and the story of Y author, or some way that shows a combination in a new way. That's another way to approach it. So this is often the kind of thing that's done in blurbs or endorsements on the back of the book. If you want to look at some of those and think about how you might use that language or use that way of positioning your title, and for you to think through the project that way. It's also, comparative titles are like the people who bought this function on Amazon. If someone who bought this also bought this, that's what you want to show the agent or the editor. Publishers want to understand where your book might have a home, among which readers or readerships, and comparative titles are a way to do that. So writers need to be readers. This should go without saying. You need to show that you know your business. Any type of professional would need to show this about their business, right? So as a writer, you need to show that you know your business. So you must be especially well-read in the kinds of nonfiction that you're trying to sell, especially the recent critically acclaimed or best-selling titles. So imagine which of those books that you've read and the kind of book that you're trying to write that might sit comfortably or happily alongside yours on a dream shelfie. Like, where would your book be sitting on a shelf next to other like books? That may be your list of comps. If you're writing a memoir and you don't have favorite memoirists, that's a problem. If you're writing a biography and you don't have favorite biographers, or if they were all published 30 years ago, that's a problem. The point is to find books that did well, books that were written recently in your genre that you think are a similar kind of feel or read to yours. So moving forward with this process is tough, no question. This can be daunting depending on where you're starting. And so I think setting goals and doing things in smaller parts will help you get there. You might try to draft the sample chapter of the book as you draft the proposal. I would recommend this. I think this can be a really positive thing. They will start to, I would think, likely start to shape each other. That is, as you write the sample chapter, the proposal might change. And as you write the proposal, the sample chapter might change. You might start with the section of the proposal that comes most easily to you, and then move on from there, setting goals for completion of a section of the draft of it by the week or by the month. That is, if you take it, break it into smaller parts and say, I'm going to do one part a week. I'm going to do the comps this week. I'm going to do the marketing section this week. I'm going to do 3 of the short chapter proposals this week, or some smaller version of it. It will start to build, and then you'll be able to go back and change. I think too, you want to read what sample book proposals are like and sound like. Many authors have shared theirs on the web. Sometimes they've shared successful proposals, sometimes they've shared unsuccessful proposals, but you can see what these feel like and what these read like. And I think it should be positively inspiring, even if looking at them feels like, wow, how will I get there? Please remember that a lot of these proposals were written over the course of years, a year or years. I think when you see it in those terms, it ought to become less daunting. You should also be asking others to read your proposal and note where you were, where they, as they read, were most at least engaged and why. And you need a little bit of a thick skin for this here, right? But I think, here's where I'm most interested. Here's where you're losing me. Here's where I'm least interested. with your writing, with the story, with the book, with the proposal too. And not only asking other editors, because of course they are important to consult with, other editors or agents, but other people you know who like to read books. Ask them where the parts are that they are following you, with you, want to know more, and where they are either falling behind or not understanding or not wanting to continue to read as much as they did in the previous section of the previous page. We often say we're writing for general readers, but I think writers don't often enough give our materials to general readers. And hopefully you have somebody in your circle who qualifies as that quote unquote general reader. And by this, I mean someone who's not an expert, someone who may or may not be a writer, him or herself, but somebody who cares about what you're doing and who will be honest with you. What you want is honest feedback. Not all of this is equally great, but here are the parts where I see you really hitting your stride, and here are the parts that I think you want to go back to and work on further. So that's where I'd like to start us off. Thanks for participating and hearing a bit about nonfiction proposal writing. I'd love to stay connected with you. If you're on Twitter, follow me and I'll follow back. If you want to sign up for my bi-monthly author newsletter, by the way, another thing to do to show your marketing, a great idea, you can sign up for mine on my website, devoney.com. If you want to show me an example of yours, I'd love to see it. Please give me an email at devoney@me.com. If you have an author letter, I'd love to see that. I think it's good to study this genre too, the author newsletter. Okay, look forward to our next opportunities to have an exchange with each other, and best of luck on this nonfiction proposal. Look forward to talking more.